know of that would indicate that, certainly.
Sarah, I was in the courthouse, at the courthouse last hour when the Judge Emmett Sullivan basically said that he was disgusted by Michael Flynn's crimes. He said that he had disdain for Flynn. Flynn said that he knew that it was illegal to lie to the FBI, and he was ready to accept responsibility. This was all before agreeing to a delay in sentencing. Given that, are you in a position now, or would you like to revisit your comments earlier today that the FBI ambushed Flynn here?
No. We still firmly believe, look, the things that may have taken place, again, that's for the judge to make that determination, whether he engaged in something inappropriate. What we do know that was inappropriate by own self-admittance of James Comey is that the FBI broke standard protocol in the way that they came in and ambushed General Flynn, and in the way that they questioned him, and in the way that they encouraged him not to have White House counsel's office present. And we know that because James Comey told us that, and he said that the very reason that they did it was because the only reason that they did it, it was the Trump administration, and they thought they could get away with it. Those are facts, and certainly there may be other issues there, but that we don't have any reason to want to walk that back. Sager?
Very quickly about Michael Flynn. He has cooperated with the special counsel's office and met with him 19 times. Is there a particular reason why the president has not said that he is a rat, the way that he has said that Michael Cohen is a rat for cooperating with Russia?
Look, we know Michael Cohen to be a liar on a number of fronts, and the president's opinion is extremely clear on that front. I don't see any reason to go beyond that comment at this point.
Thanks, Sarah. Two questions for you on the government shutdown. First, can you clarify us the current White House position towards the continuing resolution that's floating up on the Hill? Is it a demand for $1.6 billion in border wall funding, or is it supporting a continuing resolution to take this matter up after the Christmas break?
You know, at this point, the Senate's thrown out a lot of ideas. We're disappointed in the fact that they've yet to actually vote on something and pass something. So when they do that, we'll make a determination on whether or not we're going to sign that. In the meantime, we're looking at every avenue available to us possible. The president's asked every one of his cabinet secretaries to look for funding that can be used to protect our borders and for give the president the ability to fulfill his constitutional obligation to protect the American people by having a secure border. So we're looking at the other options. In the meantime, we'll see what the Senate does, and we'll let you know when we have an announcement on that front.
Second question.
Sorry, Sarah, I'm going to keep moving just because we're tight on time. Go ahead.
So following up on that, there's other sources that could potentially pay for the wall. Which agencies are you looking at? You've mentioned DOD.
As I said, we're looking at, the president's asked every agency to look and see if they have money that can be used for that purpose, and that's exactly what we're doing.
And if they can find that money, does that mean the president would accept a budget proposal that does not include any money to fund new border wall construction?
Once again, we want to see what the Senate can pass. They've thrown out a lot of ideas. They've yet to take a vote. Once they do that, we're disappointed in the process and their inability to put something forward. Once they make a decision and they put something on the table, we'll make a determination on whether or not we'll move forward on either a short-term or long-term friendly bill. Sorry, Joe, I'm going to keep moving. Josh, go ahead.
Michael Flynn today tweeted that he did lie to the FBI and to them repeatedly, and that he was working for a foreign government during the campaign. Does that concern the president? I mean, he seems to be concerned that Michael Cohen is a liar. Does he concern that one of his top aides lied to the FBI and was working for a foreign government?
Not when it comes to things that have anything to do with the president. The activities that he has said to, and again, we'll let the court make that determination, to have engaged in don't have anything to do with the president. Let's remember what the whole thing that this started is supposed to be about. It's whether or not Russia influenced the election and whether or not the president had anything to do with it. We know that that Russia tried to create chaos within the election, but certainly not that they actually impacted it. The only reason that the president is the president is because he was a better candidate and beat Hillary Clinton. We also know that the president never colluded with Russia. So that's the whole reason that we have this, and we know those things to be false.
Is the president concerned that Michael Flynn lied to a representative of his own government and was working for another government during the campaign? Is that concern him or not?
Look, there's certainly concern, but that's something for the court to make that determination, and we'll let them do that.
Positive comments about him when he's pleaded to this.
Again, we're going to let the court play that out, and they'll make a determination on whether or not he engaged in something right or wrong.
Why is the president making positive comments about him, given these things that he's pled guilty to?
It's perfectly acceptable for the president to make a positive comment about somebody while we wait to see what the court's determination is. Like,
Sarah, let me ask you about a tweet that the president sent out earlier today as he continues to vent frustration about the Federal Reserve. He said that he hopes the Fed reads the Wall Street Journal op-ed. Part of the op-ed, the Journal points out that U.S. growth might be slowing. The president's tariff battles have reduced investment. Housing and autos are down, and there's a few cracks showing as well in the credit markets. When the president talks about the Fed, is he just venting at this point, or is he genuinely worried that if there is a rate hike tomorrow, that the economy will slow down?
the president is stating his opinion, which he is perfectly within his right to do so. I think that is one of the reasons people like him, is because he does that and he does it regularly. He's been very clear about what his position is, while at the same time he understands that the Fed is an independent agency. That doesn't take away the president's right to state his opinion on a particular matter.
And let me ask you as it relates
Sorry,
to
I'm
the
going to keep
shutdown.
moving. Francesca, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I just want to clarify one thing and then move back onto the border wall. But the clarification on Michael Flynn, you said it has nothing to do with the president, but one of the things that the judge brought up today was that it was so concerning to him because Michael Flynn lied inside the White House as the national security advisor to the president. So is the White House disputing at this point that Michael Flynn is a liar? Because that's also the reason that he was fired. He was fired for lying.
We're disputing that any actions he engaged in had nothing to do with the president. That just because maybe he did do those things, but that doesn't have anything to do with the president directly.
Okay, when it comes to the border wall, today on television, you mentioned that the president would be willing to accept $1.6 billion for the wall, the way that I understood it when you said it, and also that plays into a broader $25 billion bill over 10 years. Is that what the White House's current offer is to Capitol Hill, that it would accept?
Again, we are continuing to have constant and regular conversations with the Hill. I'm not going to negotiate here. We've laid out clearly what our parameters are with members of Congress. We want to know what they can pass. We want to know what they think they can actually get done. We've laid out what we'd like to see. In the meantime, we're looking at other areas where we can draw money from to make sure that the president can actually protect our border and protect American citizens.
With the deficit ballooning to over $1 trillion under this president, where are the additional monies for this wall going to come from, and why is he asking the American taxpayer for them when he promised Mexico was going to pay?
Look, we're not asking American taxpayers for that. We are looking at existing funding through other agencies right now that we can draw on to do that in immediately.
So
the
this
president's
will add to
been
the
clear.
deficit.
The president has been clear that the USMCA deal would provide additional revenue through that deal that would show that Mexico is paying for the wall.
The Treasury, though, the trade benefits, if there are any, don't go to the Treasury.
He's saying that the revenue provided and the money that would be saved through the USMCA deal, we could pay for the wall 4 times over, and by doing that new trade deal, we have the opportunity to pay for the wall.
But trade benefits go to private citizens. They don't go to the United States
Talking
Treasury.
he's talking about the general revenue that comes from that.
So you're going to tax.
No, we're not taxing. We're talking about additional revenue that wouldn't have existed without the president getting a new deal.
Have you done the math on that?
There have been a number of things that we've looked at in which we know we'll have additional revenue that comes in through the USMCA.
From the USMCA
We think
into
we'll
the
have.
Treasury?
We think there will be more than that comes in. Jeff, go ahead.
Sarah, it was announced today that the president's charity is being dissolved. Does the president or anyone in his family have regrets about how that charity was handled?
That's something that I would refer you to the Trump Organization. That's not something we could comment on here at the
One other question on another topic.
Sorry, I'm
Can you
gonna
just,
keep
can you
moving.
just
No, go
clarify,
ahead.
Sarah, real
Yeah,
quick on something
real
else? Whether the president has given any indications to Turkey that he would be willing to extradite the cleric Gulen?
The only thing he said is that we would take a look at it, nothing further at this point beyond that.
Look at
Take a
extraditing.
look at it, but nothing committal at all in that process, just that he would look into it.
You've been saying a lot that things don't have anything to do with the president, and he's just giving his opinion, and he has a right to give his opinion. But does he not have a broader right, responsibility as far as, if his national security advisor is lying, should he not be speaking on behalf of the American people, not just himself, President Trump, man under investigation, but, in all these aspects? You're talking about saying that he is just speaking for himself and he's not been linked to collusion is the claim, and therefore, it doesn't matter what he says. And the same thing with
That's
the
not what I
Fed,
said at all.
that his comments on the Fed have no bearing. He's just giving his opinion. What about him
I didn't
speaking
say they
for
have
the
no
American
bearing.
people?
I said he's the president of the United States, and he should not only does he have the ability to give his opinion, he should give his opinion. That's why the people elected him, is because they trusted him to make decisions on policy matters. They want to know what his positions are on specific policies. He absolutely should state his opinion on not just that, but on every topic that comes up that he wants to engage on.
But a lot of people who are somehow involved in investigations feel the FBI is unfairly targeting them, but the president normally has a different role
We
as
know
far
for a
as...
fact that the FBI engaged in an outrageous amount of political bias. The fact that anybody could deny that there was political bias within the FBI, particularly under James Comey's leadership, is frankly just laughable.
I guess I'm wondering, using terms like rat and things like that to talk about people who are cooperating witnesses with the FBI.
Or
does
people
he
who
not
are
have-
dishonest
does
and
he-
lying.
Does
I
he
mean,
not have a broader
seems like a pretty
responsibility
appropriate term.
to preserve confidence in the rule of law for the American people?
Certainly, and that's why he has appointed new people to help do exactly that, whether it's Director Wray, a new Attorney General, somebody that can come in and be very transparent throughout this process. We'll take one last question. Justin, the President's event's about to kick off.
Sure, I just wanted to go back to the shutdown, and you keep saying that you've asked agencies to look for more money, and so on this issue of reprogramming specifically, is your red line in these negotiations that you need Congress to reprogram money explicitly? So DHS or the Defense Department or whoever it might be the Congress say you can spend this money that we didn't spend on something else on wall construction, or
No.
are you saying that you think that you have the legal authority, and what are you, I guess, basing that legal authority on, since Nancy Pelosi said today that in fact that sort of authority doesn't exist?
I would never use Nancy Pelosi as my source for legal authority on probably anything, but I would use attorneys that work here at the White House and in agencies that that's their entire job, is determining whether or not something is legal, and we're looking to those individuals to find out those
So
specific pots of money that can be used for that.
A bonus amount of money that is sort of reprogrammed by Congress won't be necessary for the president's signature on this budget bill.
We would like to see Congress pass an appropriations bill that fully funds our government and that allows the president to protect our border and provides substantial border security funding, both for the wall, for CBP, for ICE, all of DHS. But in the meantime, we're also looking at other avenues that would allow us to provide and do our constitutional authority and the president to be able to carry that out by protecting our border and protecting American citizens. I'd encourage you guys to tune in to the president's event. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
1-minute briefing, Sarah.
Do your job, Sarah. opposed the bipartisan Senate DHS bill, which has $1.6 billion for border security, plus a $1 billion slush fund for the president to use for his radical immigration agenda. After the meeting, I spoke to Leader Pelosi, and I called Leader McConnell and told him we would not accept their $1 billion slush fund and that our offers to fund the government remain. Let me be clear. The Republican offer today would not pass either chamber. We Democrats have made two reasonable offers that could earn overwhelming bipartisan support in both the House and Senate. One, pass the 6 bipartisan appropriations bills and a 1-year CR for the Homeland Security bill, or alternatively, a 1-year CR for the remaining 7 appropriations bills. The President said last week he would be proud to shut down the government. We Democrats don't want to shut down the government. And as for the idea of what Sarah Sanders Huckabee said, they could get wall money from NAFTA or some other part of the government, they need congressional approval. They're not getting it for the wall. Plain and simple. Now, where are we? The ball remains in the President's and Republicans' court to accept one of our common sense proposals. Now, on another matter also of great importance to American families, and that is health care. A ruling last Friday from a federal judge in Texas put the future of the federal Affordable Care Act at great risk. Every American should be aware of the fact that if the ruling is upheld, the entire law would come crashing down, causing nothing short of chaos in our health care system and calamity for over 100 million Americans. We don't believe that the ruling should stand or will stand. But the danger it poses is so great, we can't simply hope for the right result. We should do something quickly to allow the Senate to be heard and persuade the courts not to tear down the health care law. And in fact, we have added weight because the judge based part of his decision on legislative intent. So, we must act, and we hope we can act in a bipartisan way. Senator Manchin has a resolution to authorize the Senate Legal Counsel to defend the Affordable Care Act on behalf of the Senate. We intend to force a vote on this resolution as soon as possible. Every Republican who claims to be for protections of pre-existing conditions ought to vote aye on the resolution. It's the quickest and best way to ensure the court case against the Affordable Care Act does not remove the protections so many Americans need. I urge my Republican colleagues not just to talk the talk and say they care about these things, but to walk the walk and join us in our intervention against this awful court decision. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chuck. It's been 6 years since we started this journey on criminal justice reform. We've reached a moment where it is an historic possibility both substantively and politically. We have a bill before us on the floor that will address criminal sentencing for the first time in almost a decade, and a bill which will address the issue of prison reform for the first time in the memory of man and woman. This is an opportunity that we can pass a bill this week before we leave for the Christmas vacation. We have bipartisan support. Senator Grassley and I have brought the bill to the floor along with Senators Lee and Booker. We are anticipating 3 amendments by Senator Cotton. We are prepared to debate and vote on those amendments as quickly as possible. The strongest group in opposition to the Cotton Amendment, the association and organizations representing the victims of crime across America, who have all come out against the Cotton Amendments. What Senator Cotton is attempting to do in his amendments, they find violates the basic trust they had as criminal victims when they were given the rights under law to be informed. Roughly 90% said yes, but 10% said no. Senator Cotton is going to try to violate that legal principle and force information on those criminal victims who have asked not to be informed of what happens to the criminal defendant involved in the perpetration of their crime. We believe we can defeat all 3 amendments and bring this bill to a vote. I hope that we also hold open the possibility of bipartisan amendments before we close this that I think will make it an even better bill. But we have an amazing coalition backing us now. We want to get it done, and the sooner the better.
Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. Well, once again, thanks to very reckless Republican politics on health care, families are again in this country very worried about their coverage. Right in the middle of the holidays and looking ahead to a new year, people with pre-existing conditions are once again wondering whether the protections that they rely on to afford coverage will stay in place. Moms and dads who breathe the sigh of relief that a child's broken bone or a chronic illness wouldn't mean financial ruin are again having to hold their breath. Women who no longer have to pay extra on top of their insurance just to get birth control are wondering whether they'll once again have to pay more for a basic part of their health care. And vulnerable young men and women who are under the age of 26 will lose their coverage on their parents' policy. Let's be clear, if this goes into effect, this latest blatantly partisan legal threat is the whole ballgame when it comes to health care for tens of millions of people in our country. There could not be more at stake. Now, we heard a lot about health care from President Trump and Republicans in Congress heading into this past November. We heard they fought to keep pre-existing condition protections, even that every single Republican in the Senate wanted to keep them in place. They insisted they cared about affordable health care for people they represent. Well, based on the health care sabotage we have seen from this president and his party, I find that hard to believe. But if Senate Republicans want to reverse course and protect families from this latest health care threat that they've created, there's a very simple way they can start. Instead of ignoring the unbelievable harm this ruling would do if it goes into effect, or introducing bills that won't actually protect patients and families, they can join the Democrats' resolution, make it clear that Congress never intended to throw health care into chaos. And the Trump administration can direct the Department of Justice to defend families' health care like it should have long ago. Democrats are waiting and we are watching, but much more importantly, the patients and families that count on us across the country have made it abundantly clear they are tired of reckless, harmful Republican politics on health care. And finally, I just want to say, with just a few days to go before a completely unnecessary Trump shutdown right before the holidays, Republicans really have 2 choices. They can do the right thing, work with us to keep government open and fund our national priorities, or they can stand with President Trump, who has said he would, quote, be proud to shut down the government to try to get American taxpayers to pay for his wasteful wall. This should not be hard. I hope we end this year without a completely unnecessary crisis.
Senator Stabenow.
Thank you. First, I want to congratulate and thank Senator Durbin for pulling together a coalition with Senator Booker and others, a bipartisan group that's going to make a very important step forward with all of us supporting it on criminal justice reform. Secondly, regarding health care, you know, the American people have said over and over again, their health care is personal, not political. That's why they engage in the effort to keep the Affordable Care Act, people from all over the country, and it worked. That's why people now are saying to us, what is going to happen? What are we going to do to make sure that they don't lose their health care? 20 million people plus, over 1 million in Michigan, will lose all of their health care if this court case is upheld. And everyone will be affected, literally. At least half the families in Michigan have someone with a pre-existing condition. Over half the population are women that are affected by whether or not we pay more and discriminated against for being women, or whether our health care will be fully covered. And in so many ways, health care, all of the things in the Affordable Care Act literally affect every American. And that's why we are joining with the leader, with Senator Manchin, in saying the U.S. Senate, along with the U.S. House, and frankly, the White House, needs to do everything possible to stand up for people's right to have health care. healthcare is something that is not political, it's personal. And the other thing that we are asking is that we come together to move forward, to fund our government. It's pretty basic. The ability to continue public services and do it in a bipartisan way, and we're ready to do that.
Members from both upper caucuses coming out of luncheon seem to think that short-term CR might be the only tax plan here. Is that something you and your caucus are willing to support?
Look, if Leader McConnell puts a short-term CR on the table, it's something we'd very seriously consider.
Leadership.
Some of the early suggestions are that may go through February. Is that?
That's Leader, it's Leader, our choice, our preference is the two proposals we've made. If Republicans can't agree to those and propose a short-term CR, we'd certainly very seriously look at it, for sure. But as to how long it is will be up to Leader McConnell.
Leadership.
The president told you he'd be proud to take the blame for a shutdown. Why do you think he changed his mind?
I think, you know, his basic position was untenable. And we were surprised when he said it in the White House. The American people don't want it, and most of his Republican colleagues don't want it.
Leadership. What about the idea that when you exchange these offers, and we get it right up against the deadline, this is typical. Leader McConnell said, you know, you guys rejected his offer. Isn't this always the kind of the way it has to go at this stage?
We had an offer out on the table for days. Ours is the only offer that I know that could pass both houses.
Are you willing to negotiate and include a package of judges as part of a year-end?
You know, our job right now is to get the government funded without a wall. We have had no discussion about judges, none. Nope, next. Nope. Secretary Mattis doesn't seem it's a good idea, and I sure wouldn't want to take the money away from the troops. Okay, thank you.
Is there any way to salvage this offer from McConnell by tweaking it, by making the fund
A $1 billion slush fund is not what is right, what the American people want, and it couldn't get votes in either house to pass.
Senator Schumer, would you rule out a package of judges at the end of the year?
We have had no discussions on judges. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
The Downing playbook. There you go. I'm over here, sir.
You have some room over here if you want. Go ahead. Thank you very much. We're here to discuss concrete steps of our nation that we have to take. We have no choice, and we don't want a choice. We're going to take to prevent school shootings and keep our children safe. Following the horrific shooting in Parkland, my administration formed the School Safety Commission. Today, the commission released its official report, and that's a very important thing. These are some of the people, parents and incredible parents that I've gotten to know, and some of the people that are most involved with the tragedy of Parkland. The report includes nearly 100 detailed recommendations based on the input from families, educators, mental health practitioners, law enforcement, and federal, state, and local leaders. And I will say this, every one of them is knowledgeable. I want to thank Secretary Betsy DeVos for leading the commission along with the other commission members, Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, Secretary Alex Azar, and Secretary Kirsten Nielsen. Thank you very much. We're also joined by Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, thank you, Montana Superintendent Elsie Arnson, Kentucky Sheriff Kevin Byers, and President of the Santa Fe, Texas School Board, Rusty Norman. Thank you all very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Most importantly, we're honored to be joined by Carson Apt, a brave survivor of the Parkland shooting, along with families who have lost their loved ones in this horrible, horrible school shooting. Andy Pollock, Brian Petty, Max Schachter, Scarlett Lewis, and J.T. Lewis. Terrific people. Your courage in the face of this horrible event, the grief inspires us all. Last week I met with Max Ryan and many other Parkland families. We are profoundly grateful to all of the families who are working with us to help prevent others from suffering the same terrible heartache and tragedy. My administration is pursuing a comprehensive strategy to address school violence. We enacted 2 critical reforms into law, the Fix NICS Act, which you know about, which strengthens very strongly the background checks for firearm purchases, and the Stop School Violence Act, which provides grants to schools to improve safety. And they've gone a long way. We've also secured historic levels of funding to give schools and police more resources to protect their students. This morning, we also completed the process to issue a new regulation banning bump stocks. And Matt, you'll be talking about that in a minute. We've taken important steps, but much work remains to be done, as always. Today, we are reviewing the recommendations put forward by the School Safety Commission. These include fixing mental health laws so that families and law enforcement can get treatment immediately to those who need it. Encouraging states to adopt extreme risk protection orders which give law enforcement and family members more authority to keep firearms out of the hands of those who pose a danger to themselves and to others. Launching a no notoriety campaign which would encourage the media not to use the names or, frankly, anything having to do with the shooters. I see it all the time. They make these people famous, and they're not famous. They're the opposite. They're horrible, horrible people. I think that's a very important one. No notoriety campaign. Supporting local efforts to create a culture that cherishes life and fosters deep and meaningful human connections, allowing highly trained school personnel to have access to firearms. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the average duration of an active shooter incident at a school is under 5 minutes, so all of this horrible carnage takes place in a very short period of time. That is why it's critical to have armed personnel available at a moment's notice. These are people, teachers in many cases, that are the highest trained that you can get. People that are natural to firearms, people that know how to handle them, people that have great experience, and on top of the experience have taken courses, and they're right on the site. This is critical to the hardening of our schools against attack. Also, they love our students. I've seen the teachers, I've seen so many of them over the last 2 years especially, where something's happened, and they truly love their students. And by loving their students, they want to fight for their students more than anybody else would. But for any strategy to succeed, there must be accountability to all levels of government, and we must ensure communities can respond quickly and decisively to warning signs, stopping tragedy before it strikes. And that's obviously our number one goal, stopping it before it ever happens. I look forward to discussion today, and we're going to have a big discussion. You can stay around if you want for a little while. Some of these folks have incredible things to say, incredible ideas. We couldn't have had the ideas that they have as parents and as loved ones. Nothing is more important than protecting our nation's children. So with that, I'd like to just ask Betsy to say a few words. And Matt, you're going to talk about bump stocks, and we'll go around and talk to some of the folks. Please, Betsy.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President. After the tragedy in Parkland, Florida, you took swift action. No parent should fear for their child's life when they go to school, and no student or teacher should ever have to worry about their safety at school. Sadly, incidents of school violence are too common, and too many families and communities have faced these horrible challenges. But Americans have never shied away from challenges, nor have we cowered when evil manifests itself. Mr. President, you showed leadership by promptly convening students, families, and educators to have honest dialogues about school violence. And when you asked me to chair the Federal Commission on School Safety, you rightly insisted that our nation must come together to address the underlying issues that foster a culture of violence. You noted that we cannot keep our children safe by looking at only one aspect of a much larger problem. Today, we present our completed report, and I want to thank my fellow commissioners and their staffs for all of the great work that was done on this report. The report addresses a holistic view of school safety based on the insights, experiences, and expertise of many individuals. Our recommendations can assist states and local communities. Ultimately, governors and state legislators should work with school leaders, teachers, parents, and students to address their own unique challenges and develop their own specific solutions. How schools and communities consider these recommendations will vary. Their approach should start by fostering a positive climate and a culture of connectedness. This report highlights social and emotional learning and a number of other recommendations that policymakers should explore. But let's remember, local problems need local solutions. Ultimately, the recommendations do not and cannot supplant the incomparable role that families play in the lives of children and in our culture. To the families of Meadow, of Elena, of Jesse, and of Alex, and of the other families not here today, we hope the actions that come out of this Commission's work will spare other families future tragedies and grief.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Appreciate it. Matt?
Sir, under your strong leadership, the Department of Justice has prosecuted more gun crimes this year than ever before. And in addition, today we faithfully followed your leadership by making clear that bump stocks, which turn semi-automatic weapons into machine guns, are illegal. We all remember what happened in Las Vegas on October 1st, and I don't have to recount that horrific day. But you know, the shooter that day used a bump stock to accelerate the carnage that was inflicted. The final rule that was signed today, the Department of Justice clarified that bump stock type devices are machine guns and are prohibited by federal law. And anyone possessing these bump stock devices have about 90 days to either destroy them or turn them into an ATF field office before this rule becomes final and is enforced. So I think that's a big victory for your administration, sir. And then briefly on school safety and DOJ's role, we participated in all of the events and all the field visits. We specifically worked on issues like the extreme risk protection orders, the ERPO that you mentioned, We've made improvements to the FBI tip line that I know some of the parents were concerned about coming out of the Parkland shooting. We continue to provide crisis and emergency training for law enforcement, and we will continue to do that. And we looked at the issue of age restrictions on firearms, and we just did not have any existing evidence-based research that suggests that would make a difference, but we're going to continue to sponsor and fund research so that we can get an answer to that question.
And a bump stock, so you have to go through a statutory period. And once you go through that period, that's going to be the end of bump stocks.
So there's a 90-day grace period.
Right.
That this about March 21st is when they will finally become unlawful to possess.
Good. Good. And that took a lot of legal work and good legal work. Thank you.
You know, and the other thing on the bump stock, sir, that you should know is we received 186,000 comments as part of our rulemaking. Most of them were positive comments, but we had to sift through all of them and make sure that our rulemaking was done the right way and that we considered all those
When you
comments.
say positive, in that.
Positive, they supported the action that your administration took today.
Okay, good. That's very good. Thank you very much. Pam?
President, thank you for caring. You always care so much about our kids and our kids' safety, and that means so much to this country. I went to assist in Nevada after that shooting, saw the carnage. Meadows' brother, Hunter, is my intern, and I was with Max since that night it happened. I'll never forget that, Max, and all these great families who you've listened to and cared so much about. You're saving so many lives, and Secretary and the entire Commission, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Good job you did. Great job in Florida.
Thank you.
What about it, Max?
I want to thank you, Mr. President. Ever since Alex was murdered, I've been traveling this country to see what schools are doing it well and are making our schools safe. And I come to the conclusion that a lot of schools just don't know how to make them safe. Schools are focused on educating our children, and now they're forced with having to be security experts. So after Alex was murdered, I have a vision to create a clearinghouse of national school safety best practices, and I want to thank you for putting that in this recommendation. Thank you, Secretary, and all the secretaries that put this report together. Schools need guidance on best practices and what to do first, what to do second, and we don't want schools wasting money on items that are not proven to save children's lives. So this report recommended the creation of a clearinghouse, a repository to produce national school safety best practices. This has never been done before, and I think this specific recommendation is going to make schools across the country safer and children. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great job you've done, too. Appreciate it. Carson, please.
Hi. I think touching upon what Max was saying, there are great recommendations in this, but now it's up to the states and to schools to actually put these recommendations to action. On the federal level, we've gone as far as you can regarding this, and now it's up to the states and the schools. And there are a wide variety of recommendations, and while all of them are helpful, only one may be needed to change a school or to save someone's life. And as a student at Douglas now, I look at the school and I see what's been done already. Specifically, one of the things I've noticed is we have a lot more drills and protocols about what to do in not just active shooter drills, but in any emergency drills. And that's something where it's not just necessary for a school, but it's necessary for life. Because this isn't just happening at schools. This is happening in movie theaters and concerts. And if you know what to do at a young age, it's going to unfortunately be instinct by the time you're older. And while it's unfortunate, it will help keep you safe. So I thank you, Secretary, Mr. President, and all the other secretaries for creating a large report of recommendations, because it gives a wide variety for schools to choose from.
Thanks, Carson. I appreciate it. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Right after my daughter was murdered, I came to the listening session here at the White House, and I addressed the country, and I said we all need to come together and focus on school safety. It's something we all could agree on. And after that happened, there was a lot of people in the country that just wanted a certain agenda, okay? And you all know what that agenda is. But not this administration and the president yet. They wanted to look into the facts of what happened that led up to Parkland. And the president listened. And he put together a commission that was going to look into all the facts that led up to February 14th to make it so it doesn't happen again. He formed the commission, and this is the most comprehensive report done after a school shooting ever by administration. That's going to affect the quality of life for all students and teachers throughout this country. Because I know it affected me personally what happened in Parkland, and these families know what happened in Parkland. And in this report that the president helped put together with his policymakers, I know there's people that we spoke with, and his administrators and his secretaries, they all put this report together, and it means so much to all of us. And this president and his administration listened, and he did this, and it means a lot to all the families. And we want to thank all the administration for getting this done and making it safer for all the kids in this country. And that's what it's about. Looking at the past, looking what happened, and looking to prevent it from happening again. Okay, that's what you do. You look at the facts, what it led up to February 14th, and you look to change things. And that's what this administration did. And I want to thank you so much for doing that. And thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, everybody. Scarlett?
Yeah, well, this is Jesse, President Trump. And Jesse actually stood up to the shooter when he came into his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook. And his brave actions saved 9 of his classmates' lives before losing his own. And I wanted to talk about that courage today, especially because I think that I want to thank you for your courage, Betsy, for your courage. You really listened. When I opened the report, the number one thing in the report was proactive prevention and social emotional learning. That's what I've been focusing on in the Jesse Lewis Choose Love movement since day one, cultivating safety from the inside out of a child. External safety measures are so incredibly important, but equally as important is teaching kids how to manage their emotions, giving them skills and tools for resilience, teaching them how to have healthy connections. Connection is love. That's cultivating safety from the inside out. You've got that in this report. This is the first administration to do that, and I want to thank you for your courage.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Secretary?
Well, thank you for creating the commission. Thank you for your leadership. I want to thank Secretary DeVos for all her hard work and that of her team and my other commissioners. But I want to thank everyone around this table. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for giving a voice to the victims and survivors and to our communities. We listened. We hope that we learned from you. This is the start. We were just discussing this will not sit on a bookshelf. We intend to implement it under the President's guidance and leadership. But I want to thank you all because it's understanding the communities, what you need, what the risk is, how you would like to address it, that got us to this today. So thank you very much for all of your involvement.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kirsten. Please, Ryan.
Mr. President, thank you for having us here today. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. I'd like to thank the commissioners also for their hard work. I was flying down here when this was released and trying to devour it on the plane as quickly as I could. As Andy said, this is the most comprehensive report I've ever seen, and I applaud the comprehensive nature, but also the depth that goes into each of the recommendations and the thoughtfulness in putting this together. There's so much to like here. My hope is that rather than fighting over the things we don't like or we think are missing, that as a nation we'll come together and focus on the things we do agree on, because 99% of this I think we can agree on and we can move forward. And if we'll just agree on it, I think we can take steps towards solving this. So, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you
for doing
much.
that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. There's been a lot of love doing this. You know, it's very interesting when you talk about the report, and people are loving it in terms of hopefully it's going to be very effective. It's going to be put to good use. But it came out of a lot of great and really brilliant people and people that love what they're doing because they understand where it's all coming from and where it's going and what you want to accomplish, much more so than just haphazardly putting a group of experts in charge. So I just want to thank everybody so much. Thank you very much. Alex?
Yes, Mr. President, and I'd like to especially thank Secretary DeVos for her leadership of the Commission and the efforts here, and really echo what Scarlett had to say about the mental health issues. I think that was one of the key learnings of the Commission, was just what we're facing in terms of depression, anxiety, and self-harm thoughts of our kids. Major depression has increased by 2/3 among youth from 2010 to 2017. 1 in 8 children will have a major depressive episode in any given year. And mental health disorders that are not properly treated can lead to self-harm and harm for others. And so that's one of the key outgrowths of this report, are 4 key areas for focus and recommendation at the federal, state, and local level. The first is that we've got to make sure our mental health services and connections to treatment are available in our schools. We've got to get to our kids where they feel safe. Second is that we've got to have opportunities for more effective screening for mental health, and we've got to get kids on psychosocial and psychotropic medications to treat them. And third, we have to have better understanding of a lot of our medical privacy laws and education privacy laws and fix them where needed to ensure that when there's a cry for help, that cry can be heard by other family members and by authorities. And then finally, we've got to make sure that we have available and effective treatment options for our kids who are suffering from mental health disorders. So, Mr. President, we've got a very bold agenda here, an action plan, but I think these are the right kinds of issues to solve, to really tackle a problem rather than just flashy things that won't actually deliver results.
So thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate it. You've done a fantastic job. We appreciate it very much. Rusty?
Mr. President, we definitely want to thank you from Santa Fe and your team, all the work that went into this. The community of Santa Fe ISD is still very much in recovery mode from the mass tragedy that we had in May. Oddly enough, I think your commission had a meeting the day before we had our tragedy in Santa Fe, and we were given some briefings and did have an opportunity to visit with some of the commissioners and some of the folks on the committee shortly thereafter. We have undertaken many things in Santa Fe that we knew to do, hardening of schools and a few changes like that. We responded to what the community and what the parents wanted, what the students wanted to feel safer, but we really didn't know what we were looking at long term. So we were very much looking forward to this information to see, number one, what we might have missed in a best practice just in the early stages, but more importantly, what we can do to impact these students, not just in Santa Fe and not just in Texas, but all across this country. Because as I told you back in June, we have an epidemic of violence that has got to be stopped. And when you have high school students tell you that it's just the world we live in, that has to change. And I think that this will be a great step to start that way. Previous administrations have tried to do things, but I have great faith in this one is going to actually go the distance to make things really happen.
Thank you very much, Rusty. I appreciate it. Thank you. JT?
Sure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, JT.
I just want to say, since I lost my brother at Sandy Hook, and this is my mom, by the way.
I know.
It's been 19 years since Columbine, 11 years since Virginia Tech, and 6 years on Friday since Sandy Hook. And we've met with governors, we've met with senators, we've met with the previous administration, the president, and the Secretary of Education. And everyone wanted to focus on a certain issue, as Andy said, and I won't say it, but they didn't want to focus on school safety, which is the most important thing in what this report really tackles. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone who had input on this report. It's amazing stuff, and it's interesting. As I learned going back to school in Newtown, Sandy Hook, the schools become infinitely safer the day after the shooting. They implement all of this stuff, and you feel completely safe in the school that just had a shooting yesterday. So this needs to get into the schools before something like that happens. So I want to applaud everyone here for taking the effort to do this. Thank you, Secretary DeVos. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, JT. Beautiful. Thank you. Please, Jeff.
Well, Mr. President, I want to thank you for listening, as someone has already mentioned. And previous administrations kind of wanted to bury their heads in the sand. You've listened. I appreciate that so much. Secretary DeVos, I appreciate all the work you've done. Everything in here is spot on from a law enforcement aspect. Our shooting happened on January 23rd, but it wasn't the first in our area. 20 years prior to that at Heath. And this type of thing was still done 20 years ago and no progress. I think there will be progress this time. And I want to thank you for all the work that you put in on it. Mr. Voss, thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I think it's going to be a whole lot better now. I think our schools will be a whole lot safer across this nation if the state and local level takes what's in here, uses it, and gets in the legislature and passes some things that will help these recommendations stay in our schools, because our children are our most precious resource. That's our future. And I agree with Mr. Norman. This has got to stop. We've got to change, and this is a great step in that direction. And I want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sheriff. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for your leadership within this. From a rural state with a rural voice at the table here, thank you for not having it being top down. This is organic. This is coming from the bottom up, and it is not a mandate. All of the things that are here are going to be put into play in any fashion that can happen in Montana or across any of our other very rural states. Teachers. I taught for 23 years. How exciting this is to put in the hand of teachers, teacher leaders, to protect our most treasured, our students. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you very much, Secretary DeVos.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So this is available to everybody. I think you probably have a copy. If not, we'll get you one. And it'll be at your disposal, and more importantly, it'll be sent all over the country to different schools. And I think we have a lot of tremendous ideas here put up by tremendous people. So thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Mr. President, can we ask about the shutdown? Yeah.
See what happens.
Well, you say that, but
Too
what
early,
about,
too early to say, sorry. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
Press.
everybody.
Thank you, Press.
are you still willing to shut it down for $5 million?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Press.
We need border security. Thank you very much,
You
everybody.
didn't comment on those plans.
Thank you, Press, very much. Thank you, Press.
It's unbelievable.
Thank you very much, Press. Let's go. Thank you, Press. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
The question on that was, are you still?
Yeah. How are you? You made it in there, Sean?
Come on, man. I had a better spot than you had.
You, man. I'll cut today, man.
We need border security.
Oh, yeah?
Half my battles is Ali. You know, Ali like slammed my microphone a couple times.
You ran an Ali?
Yeah, he ran into me like 2 times.
What are you gonna run into you? You're the head-on camp. What are you gonna run into you?
His boom mic ran into mine.
Nice.
¿Y 10 minutos?